There is no sea or ocean for hundreds of kilometers around. Thus, Mongolia is dry. Summer is hot, plus 30 degrees. Winter is cold, minus 30 degrees Celsius, on average. Moreover, with the Himalayan mountains to the south acting like a wall, the country is isolated from the warm, wet, sub-equatorial climate of the Indian Ocean. At the same time, the Siberian north brings chilling winds from the distant Arctic. On top of this, Mongolia is located on a plateau with an altitude of around 1500 meters high. These conditions allow for a severe climatic phenomenon known as zud. These are extreme summer drought or harsh winter conditions that prevent livestock from grazing, often causing mass animal deaths. The good note is that it's rarely cloudy in Mongolia, the land of the eternal blue sky, they call it. Since ancient times, the steppe lands of Central Asia have been inhabited by nomads. While most of these nomads were moving around and mixing with different settlements, the situation in the Mongolian steppes was unique because migration was limited by natural barriers such as the Altai Mountains in the west, the Gobi Desert in the south, and the freezing wastelands of Siberia in the north, all of which were unsuitable for nomads. The tribes in Mongolia only allied with other Mongolian tribes. Although surrounding nature limited their migration, it did not prevent them from raiding its neighbors, who started building even walls. The first walls appeared in 5th century BC. These walls were erected not only to bar the ravaging nomads from the north but also between the warring Chinese states. And when the Qin state emerged victorious, forming the 4th dynasty of China, they connected the existing walls and built more along its northern frontier. It was called Long Wall. Although at the beginning it was mostly made of stones or by stamping earth and gravel between board frames, it already accounted for a stunning 2,300 kilometers in length. Here is when, in response to the threat of an expanding Chinese empire, history recorded the first unification of the Mongol people. The tribal confederation known as the Xiongnu emerged. The Qin dynasty collapsed following the emperor's death. It was succeeded by one of his generals, the king of Han province, located on the Han River, a tributary of the Yangtze River, the longest river in China and the third longest river in the world. The Han dynasty was formed. It continued to build the Chinese imperial system, which originated with Qin, a centralized monarchy in which the emperor held absolute power, supported by a bureaucracy selected through civil service exams based on Confucian principles. The Han dynasty is regarded as the golden age of Chinese history and as having a permanent impact on Chinese identity. Nowadays, the majority ethnic group of modern China, which is 90%, refers to themselves as the Han Chinese, or Han people. The Mongol tribal confederation, the Xiongnu, first defeated the Hans and now control all of the northern and western China north of the Yellow River, the second largest river in China and the sixth longest in the world. Eventually, Hans managed to repel the invaders, but with such hunter-like neighbors, as were the nomads, Hans, agricultural settlers, could never be at ease. They continued to build more walls. Over the course of the entire history, the collective fortification spanned over 21,000 kilometers. The scale of it indicates the fear these nomadic savages induced. 50 years after Christ, the Xiongnu Empire, weakened by internal conflicts, was divided into the southern and northern halves. The northern Xiongnu migrated west. Some established a state with a peculiar name in modern Kazakhstan, Yuyi-Ban, and some became known as far as Europe as Huns, and remembered as wild nomads who brought distraction and havoc. By the way, Genghis Khan regarded Mongols as descendants of the Huns. Eastern nomadic tribes, Xianbei, moved in and became the dominant power. They successfully repelled an invasion of the Huns and conquered areas of northern China. The Han dynasty collapsed, and China sank into war and fragmentation. Xianbei soon fractured as well. Its southern part, just north of the Yangtze River, became the northern dynasty of China, Northern Wei. Buddhism was introduced for the first time. To the Han Chinese, the Northern Wei were still barbarians and most migrated across the Yangtze River. Another branch of Xianbei emerged into the Rouran state. under the leadership of Mugulu. Some scholars suggest the term Mongol is likely derived from his name. Mugulu is Xianbei word for bald-headed, possibly owing to Mugulu's appearance. His hairline started at the eyebrow level. Rurans expanded and have been credited as a band of steppe robbers. The Göktürks, the ancestors of modern Turks, who historically inhabited the north of the Altai mountain region, rebelled. They would establish the first Turkic Khaganate, which would spread the Turkic people culture across Central Asia and, over time, as far as present-day Anatolia, where Turkey is now located. When overthrown, some rulers' remnants may have become Tatars, though the origin of this ethnicity is debated. However, we can say that initially it was a Mongol-Turkic assimilation, a Mongol who acquired Turkic culture and language. Later, Tatars were regarded as anyone who spoke Turkic and came from the Central Asia steppe, regardless of their exact origin. The other part of the defeated Rurans possibly migrated west and became the second wave of Mongols who raided and swept across Europe, the Pannonian Avars. The northern way gave way to the Sui dynasty, who united China proper, called Zhongguo, Central State, and is the current Chinese name for China, Central State, as opposed to the surrounding barbarian regions. The Turkic Khaganate was partitioned to the Eastern Turkic Khaganate and Western Turkic Khaganate. Reunited China under the Tang dynasty destroyed the power of the Eastern Turks and established a protectorate over them. Then, Tang conquered the Western Turks as well. But an uprising led to the restoration of the Turkic Khaganate, known as the Second Turkic Khaganate. Nevertheless, the Turkic Empire ended in 744 under the pressure of Uyghurs rebels, who founded their own Khaganate. Uyghurs were also Turkic people who linguistically and culturally descended from early Turkic tribes. The Uyghur Khaganate fell to an invasion of the Yenisei Kyrgyz from the north, and other ancient Turkic people. Defeated, Uyghurs migrated and eventually settled in the Tarim Basin, among a series of oases scattered across the Taklamakan Desert. Kyrgyz had their own Khaganate too, though they were not so much interested in establishing control over the territories they acquired. You don't take it, someone else will take it. Moreover, the Tang dynasty fell. Khitans emerged, nomadic tribes from the Far East. Not wasting time, Khitan's chieftains had established their power over the land and named themselves as emperors of northern China, founding the Liao dynasty. Later, during the Mongol Empire expansion, Kyrgyz, they would migrate south into the Tanshan Mountains, where they became the ancestors of today's Kyrgyz people. On the other hand, the Southern Song dynasty allied with the Jurchens, another Far East tribe, who subjugated Liao and made it a vassal state, forming its own northern China dynasty, Jin dynasty, forcing even the Song to retreat more to the south. The remaining Liao established the Western Liao, or Karakitai. The vacuum left in the Hexi corridor could not stay unoccupied. It is a narrow stretch of traversable and relatively arable plain between the inhospitable Gobi Desert to the north and the Tibetan Plateau to the south. The Hexi corridor is not just a natural corridor of arable land. At the time, it had the Silk Road going through it, the major trade route between the west and the east. Tanguts, Tibeto-Birman people, founded their own dynasty there, Western Xia. Remember the Tatars? The Mongol-Turkic hybrid of the time. They lived on the fertile pastures around the lakes Hulun and Buir, and now had a powerful neighbor on one side in the form of Jin, and had to withstand raids by Mongol tribes on the other. The Hamag Mongol Khanate, the Tatar Confederation, the Kirait Khanate, the Merkit Confederation, and the Naiman Khanate were 5 major Mongolic tribal confederations on the Mongolian plateau in the 12th century. The neighboring Hamag Khan was lured and captured by the Tatars and handed over to the Jin and executed. The next Hamag Khan fought the Tatars' intervention and was killed as well. The next Hamag leader was Yesugei, the father of Temujin, future Genghis Khan. Yesugei was poisoned by the Tatars in 1171. Temujin was 9 years old. Here starts the most cruel period of human history. The death toll inflicted by this Mongol will be the highest in proportion to Earth population to date.